Here's how my 12 years with John Madden began. John was already on TV, doing football games on CBS. I came off the air at KYA in San Francisco one morning. We had a studio in the building where recordings were done. He was there recording a commercial, and somebody said, "Have you ever met John Madden?" I said, "No." They said, "Would you like to?" John was recovering from a broken ankle and came limping down the hallway, and I came limping down the hallway too because I'd run a marathon the day before. So John turned to me and said, "The only reason a guy would limp is a broken ankle. Did you break your ankle?" I said, "No, I ran a marathon yesterday." He said, "How far is that?" I told him it was 26 miles. That's when he said, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" And then he reached out and shook my hand saying, "John Madden." We talked for a bit, and I told him I had the idea of adding a sports feature to my morning show. He said, "No, I don't want to do that." It turned out part of his contract deal with CBS was that in the off-season he would do something on their morning show, and he didn't like that. He didn't like reading the scores off the teleprompter, dealing with the scripts and the split-second timing of it. I said, "I don't want just a sports guy. I don't want the scores and who's going to win the Super Bowl. My idea for a sports feature would be two guys sitting in a bar just talking." He said, "Well, let me think about that." He came back in a couple of days and said, "Let's give it a try." It went well right from the start. We did it for a year, and the main problem I had was this. We'd get into things and go beyond the time allotted to sports. My boss would say, "Gene, those reports are going too long." I had to ask him, "Would you really rather have us play another record, or would you like to hear John Madden talk about getting a jackhammer for a present?" About that jackhammer. Apparently, it was something he'd always wanted, and one time he asked me, "Haven't you always wanted one?" Can't say that I had, but he was like a kid with a new bicycle. He often ended the show with, "Well, I have to go jackhammer now." I don't know if we ever established just where he was headed, but I'm glad I wasn't his neighbor. I explained to my boss that the good stuff happens when I'd say, "Thanks for being on. Bye, John. Talk to you tomorrow." That's when he'd say, "Hey, one more thing," like Peter Falk on Columbo. The one more thing was always what people would talk about. He said things that just made me laugh. We had a great rapport. At the end of that first year, my bosses flew to New York, and they said to John, "We're happy with the work. We'd like to sign you to a new contract." They said, "We're going to give you a raise." That's when John asked, "How much am I making now?" They'd also told him to pick his favorite New York restaurant so they could discuss business. He said, "Oh, my favorite, huh? Okay." And he took them to a dump of a Mexican restaurant. It was his favorite place in New York, which I always thought was funny. That was the beginning. He and I were together for 12 years. Then the station was sold in 1994, and I decided to retire. He went on to join Frank Dill at KNBR, and that was the end of our relationship, but it was a good one. Looking back on what made it work, I think it was just allowing him to be who he is. He broke barriers on TV football broadcasts. They'd say, "Oh, John, you can't do this, you can't do that." But he was his own guy. I thought that was the most basic philosophy in broadcasting. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Just go on, be yourself, and hope you get enough people to like you so you could be successful. And John was phenomenally good at that.